Welcome to HECTV's live interactive program that's part of St. Louis.
The whole production is pulled together.
It's going to be a steel bridge.
The way the cockpit is designed.
The highest rated green building in the world.
Welcome to HECTV Live. Welcome to Inside the Artist Studio. This morning we're going to focus on woodworking. Hi everybody, I'm Tim Gore, your host for HECTV Live, and I'm very happy to welcome you to Craft Alliance and their woodworking studio. Located in the heart of St. Louis's Entertainment District Grand Center, Craft Alliance provides studio space for artists in woodworking, metals, fiber, paint, all sorts of areas. And today we're going to have the chance for you to interact with artist Matt Keim as he creates a piece from scratch. I'll ask all of our interactive schools to be sure that you mute your microphones at this time. I'll be coming to you guys throughout the program for your questions and in just a few minutes to identify and make sure everybody who's joined us for our interactive connections today. But everybody who's joining us via video conference, please be sure to mute your microphones. I want to welcome those folks who are joining us via television or the web stream. You, of course, can interact via your email questions today. That email is live@hectv.org. That's live@hectv.org. I've received some email questions in advance from student groups. I'm looking forward to incorporating those and the other ones I get from whoever may be joining us via television or the web today. That's live@hectv.org. Let's do a quick moment to see what the interactive schools are who have joined us, and then I'll introduce the artist who's going to be with us as part of this program. At this point in time, I'll invite Matt to come over and join us. Matt, thanks so much for being with us.
Appreciate you having me.
Well, first of all, I guess we need to let the students have some sense of who you are, where you come from.
Sure.
What makes you interested in wood? Why the kind of things that you do, and has it been a lifelong pursuit or what?
Sure. I'm here from St. Louis. Grew up in North St. Louis County. My father taught woodworking for 30 years, so naturally I was around it for all of my life. And as I got into the age of being able to drive, I began getting more and more interested, and I wanted speaker boxes and things of that nature for my car. So I started paying a little closer attention to my father and how to construct and make basic forms and boxes, and started with that and eventually moved into doing some veneering and home theater work, and got heavily into furniture. And I was never very fast about it, but I always enjoyed it. And after a few years of that, I decided to try to find something with a little more instant gratification. You know, a piece of furniture might take you 6 months or 3 months, especially when you're doing it on the evenings and weekends, and if it had any size to it. So the great thing about wood turning is if you want to complete something in 15 minutes, you can. Mm-hmm. That's just not true in woodworking.
That's true.
I got away from woodworking and completely went into wood turning. I tried it for a couple months and I quit because I had no one to give me any instructions. So it was very frustrating. I didn't know what I was doing. Mm-hmm. I was muddling around. I had a homemade lathe made out of an I-beam and a motor hanging off on a spring. And it was very, very unusual. So eventually I met some guys that were in a wood turning group here in St. Louis, and they invited me to come to one of their meetings, and I did. And before I went home, I was the editor of the newsletter with my wife and I. And a year later I was president of the club. And I really took off from there. So I had already bought 3 lathes, and I bought them at an auction on accident. I say on accident because it was a silent bid, and somehow I got all of them.
Somehow you got all of them.
Yeah, so I had those in storage, so I pulled them out of storage, and I've been doing wood turning ever since. And,
very cool.
Recently I moved back to furniture, so I'm still heavily into wood turning, but you see a cabinet here. That's one of my pieces where I've taken wood turning and applied that to woodworking. You know, wood turning can really be a completely separate medium almost. I mean, it's the same medium, but it's completely separate from woodworking. You know, the tools are different for the most part. The process is different. So it's often kept separate, you know. So I'm working very hard to try to tie those two things that I love so much together.
We see a wide variety of pieces here.
Yeah. These are just some basic examples of both some of the reasons why I enjoy wood so much. I mean, if you look at these, the colorations are just never ending.
Is there a certain type of wood that you prefer to work with, or that you find I don't want to work with?
There are, very soft woods such as cottonwood. You know, I've tried it. Palm wood, from certain palm trees I've tried, but they're very soft and very difficult to work. And I've just found my time is better served towards woods that lend themselves a little easier.
And so I think of this as a vase?
Yeah, these are hollow vessels, so they're really completely non-functional, and I do a lot of non-functional pieces. This is turned out of a piece of Circassian walnut burl out of London that I got from a veneer mill in Cincinnati. And it's the whole piece. It's about an 1/8 inch thick. You know, I don't know if you can hear that, but you can see the holes through the cracks.
Yeah.
It's very thin, and the whole thing is hollowed through those holes. So I have special tools, and I've watched videos on how to do this, and I've taken quick one-day workshops on how to do it, and you know, I've made many of these, and they're a lot of fun. It's completely blind because your tool is inside while you're on the outside, so you can't see what you're doing. So everything's by feel, and you know, so it's a lot of fun, and it's a challenging project.
And this is a pepper mill?
This will be a pepper mill. I don't put the mechanisms in them. This is my Sumo pepper mill.
I see that.
I did a few pepper mills, and they just weren't fun. They looked like every other pepper mill you've ever seen. So I was at dinner one evening with a friend, and he had the idea of the Sumo pepper mill. So I've made many after this, different, you know, some were little concierges or you know, little girls with their heads tilted sideways, but it's a Sumo wrestler pepper mill, so it's a lot of fun.
Speaking of fun, this shelving unit's okay, what wood am I dealing with
Sure,
here?
so this is a Granadillo. It's out of Guatemala.
Granadillo?
Yeah, and it's a very inexpensive exotic wood, which is why I enjoy it, because if you know, I don't have to have so much money tied up. It's very similar to a rosewood, but it's about 5 times cheaper. You know, so I use a lot of rosewood, and I use a lot of very expensive woods, but it drives the price of the pieces that I'm making way up. So this is just as beautiful as any rosewood. It's just as difficult to work.
I like the whole off-kilter look to this.
Yeah, so it's kicked off kilter at 6 degrees, and this is my kind of ode to James Krenov. He was a very famous woodworker who I've admired my whole life, and he did cabinets that were somewhat similar in style, certainly, the same type of doors, not turned. So he didn't have any turned elements. His were typically straight up, not turned at an angle, not balancing. But this is my twist on his cabinet, and he died about 1.5 years ago, and after he passed away, I thought, I've never made a cabinet like his, but I've always read his books and always admired him, so this was my first attempt. I've got 2 more I'm working on, but
very cool. That's a very cool
It's
piece.
a lot of fun, you know, and the doors are turned on a lathe, you know, so I'm trying to incorporate lathe work as much as I can in all my furniture. The sculptural base at the bottom is turned on a lathe, and it's a lot of fun. And there's nice contrasting colors. You know, that's one thing I like about the different woods.
Very nice.
Is you can find a lot of contrasting colors. You know, there's bowls. You know, in one tree you may have 5 or 6 different colors. You know, some woods are all the same, but some are many different colors. And this is red maple, and this is a non-functional bowl, so it has the natural bark edge on the top. And this is what we're going to be making today. So it's non-functional. It's just to set on the shelf and admire. You know, so the key to this is to get the shape just how I want it. And
that's very, and I love seeing the wood grain.
Sure. Yeah,
and you mentioned that this is the kind of thing we're going to make today. Let's move over to the
sure.
What we're going to work with today. And as we move over to the spot where actually Matt's going to begin the process of creation, I want to take this opportunity to see what student groups might have just as an introductory question for Matt about what we talked about right there with the work that he's created. And Matt, I got an email question in advance from some students in Orchard Valley Middle School in Sewell, New Jersey. Nick wants to know, is there certain like an average length of time to create a piece, or does it all based on just the complicated nature of the piece?
It varies. Most pieces I can get done in under 3 hours, almost no matter what it is. Now I've done some like cowboy hats, which, you know, the first one took me I think 9 hours.
Oh my gosh!
And and that was not stopping at the lathe. And of course the guy who taught me how to do it does it in like 1 hour and 15 minutes. But I'm not that quick. I can do one in maybe 3 hours at this point, you know, and that's if I only do a few of them. They're mostly for gifts. They're just challenging, but they're a lot of fun. But you know, most pieces I do in 1 hour or less.
Okay.
I do some of the hollow vessels I showed you earlier. Those take longer. You know, it might take a few hours just to hollow it because you have to do that very slow.
Right,
it's a very slow process.
Let's go to other schools and see. Marshall Elementary, do you guys have a question?
I had one student who wanted to know if you did any animals, Audrey.
Like, how many animal sculptures have you done?
Oh, have you, besides they're interested in like if you do animal sculptures or anything like that in wood?
I have not. No, I have not. My father, no, he's a carver, so he does a lot of that. We'll carve sculptures and animals, whether it's ducks or bears, but I have never gotten into that. I may someday as I change my interest. I seem to float around quite a bit, as you can see from the various pieces.
But that makes
it
interesting.
Sure, yeah. So I don't usually stick with one thing for too terribly long. Keeps it interesting and keeps me going. So.
Well, all our
Maybe
student
I'll get
groups
there.
are interactive. Be sure to be thinking about the questions you want to ask because we're going to start creating a piece. Let's talk a little bit about what are we standing at, Matt? And what's going to
Sure.
happen?
So this is a wood lathe, and there's a motor on this side, and it's going to drive the piece. On this side, it's stationary. There's a little bearing here that's just going to support it from the back side.
Okay.
I don't always need to use this, but on a natural edge piece, there's an uneven contact up front, so I need to have extra support on the back so that it doesn't come loose and try to come off the lathe. But if I was just doing a functional bowl, it'd be flat on both sides in many cases, and I wouldn't have to worry about
All
that.
righty.
But
And what's
I
the
do
kind
today.
of wood we're going to work with today?
So this is sugar maple, which is a local wood. This was given to me by a tree trimmer here locally. So he knows that I enjoy this type of thing. So when he comes across them, he'll save them for me.
So it came to you like this already, or
No,
have you already done some prep work?
I've
with
already
it?
done some prep work. So it came to me on the side of a log.
Okay.
You know, so this came out of the log. The tree grew this way. You know, so if you think of a tree standing upright, this is the bark of the tree. So the bark would wrap around the tree in this fashion. And this came out of a knot. If you ever see a knot on the side of a tree, it came out of that. So what I've done is just taken it on a bandsaw and roughly cut it out. Sometimes I'll cut it to a perfect circle. On this one I didn't because it was kind of an awkward piece of wood. So I just took the corners off. We'll have more chips flying today than normal. If I'd made it round, then you wouldn't have quite so many chunks coming off. They'd all be shavings, you know, which we'll talk about later.
And those chunks are why we'll be wearing our safety glasses here, our safety goggles as we work. What else do the students need to know as you put the piece onto the wood piece onto the lathe?
I've drilled a hole in the center here.
Okay, right in here.
Yeah, I guessed it's approximate. You know, the lathe will make it round, so I don't need to make it perfect round until it's on the lathe. That's the purpose of my machine here. So this is a chuck, so this is going to grab this screw for me. So I'm going to tighten this on the screw. And what that'll do is I can screw that piece of wood onto that screw, and that'll give me a good hold so that it stays put. So once that's on, so now I'll take my piece. I have the hole I drilled, which matches the shaft diameter of this. I screw this on, and you'll see it's not going to contact. You know, you can see a gap here. It has not contacted the chuck on this side. It is contacting here. So if I did not support it from the back, it would, as soon as I tried to cut it, it would come loose.
It would just come loose.
Yeah, so we're going to bring this up for support. And I'll shift it a little bit to where I want it.
Okay.
This is called the tailstock. So I'll get that good and tight. Make sure this is tight. And this, it may come a little loose over time, and I'll just keep tightening this to keep pressure on it.
All right.
So now it's mounted between the two centers. So I have the headstock, the tailstock, and the chuck. And my piece of wood's mounted, and we're ready to start.
You mentioned that you got this wood from a tree trimmer, and Gabrielle from Orchard Valley had a question like, where do you get your wood from? Do you just go out to the forest and get some on your own, or does it come to you from people, or do you order it off the internet?
You know, it's a little bit of both. So I turn a lot of heavily figured and unusual woods, and those typically I have to purchase.
Okay.
It's not common in this area to have large burls. We do have them, but it's not common. If I can find them locally, I always buy them. But if I just want to make vessels or just basic salad bowls, every storm that goes through, trees fall.
You bet.
And I have a chainsaw I keep in my truck, and I'll
drive
run out
down the highway.
I'll drive out and pick it up.
Sure. Awesome.
And it's easy. You know, wood's easy to come by. And
well,
the good thing,
get us started, and I'll shift as we need to with the cameras. We're going to have handheld cameras that are going to be moving around for every shot. So I'll switch if we need to go to this side, to my left, or whatever the case may be.
Sure.
Take us away, Matt.
So we're going to bring up my tool rest here. I'm going to set it at the height that I want it, so that I'm cutting a little bit right around center, maybe a little above. And you can see you always have to test, because if I would turn the lathe on, it's going to turn and hit. So since it's not round, you always have to check it. Make sure it's not going to hit.
Okay.
And I'm still a little closer than I want to be, so I'll back that up. Just make sure it's going to come around freely, make sure everything's snug. I'm going to start out by using a bowl gouge. So this is a bowl gouge.
A bowl gouge.
And I have another one here that's a little newer. So you can see how short this one is. That's just from me using it. This is clearly my favorite. You can see how short the flute is. You know, this started out, just as long as the other one or longer.
Oh, so you're saying that over time it's
I sharpen it, yeah. So as I sharpen it, it just gets shorter and shorter, and eventually it gets too short. I'll maybe go another 3/4 of an inch, and then I'll throw this one away and buy another one.
As Matt gets started here, I want to go ahead, Matt, to get going what you need to do. I want to remind our student groups that we're going to be coming to you guys for your interactive questions, and we're going to be going through them in the order that we did previously. So I'll go to Fraser, and then I'll go to Pennsylvania, then we'll go to Marshall and check on some of our other groups as well. Matt, before I begin to go to them for questions, is there anything else you want to cover before we start taking it away?
Sure. This wood was actually cut off a downed tree about a week ago, so it's very green. It's a fresh wood, and that's the great thing about wood turning is you can use wood that was a tree today, you can make it a bowl today.
Okay.
You can't do that in woodworking because the wood moves, but on a bowl it doesn't really matter if it moves a little bit.
So like if I was going to create a piece of furniture, I want the wood to be much more aged.
Right, it has to be dried, so it has to be either kiln dried or air dried for several years.
Oh. So
that was another thing that pulled me towards wood turning is the wood, endless supply of free wood, which is great. And then it's much easier to work when it's wet.
Okay.
So this one's fairly wet. I don't know how long the tree trimmer had it before he gave it to me. Maybe he cut it down a month ago. I'm not sure, but he gave it to me about a week ago. So there might be some water in it, so we might have a little bit of water come out of it. We'll see.
Let's go for the gusto. And Fraser, and all student groups, I'll ask you guys to speak loudly and proudly as you ask your questions, because we're going to be dealing with noise here as well, and I'm hearing your questions in my ear. So Fraser, while Matt begins, do you guys have a question for him right now? Take away as you watch what happens.
Do you work with cottonwood?
And you'd mentioned cottonwood before. It's not a wood you like to work with?
Soft.
Too soft?
It's terribly soft. It's just very difficult to use. But it's one of the few that I won't use. Oak I don't care for as well. I do like it. I turn it, but it cracks very quickly because it loses moisture too fast. It's a very open-grained wood.
Eastern York, let's go up to Pennsylvania. Eastern York, do you guys have a question? Take it away.
Yeah, we were wondering when you chuck it up the way that you did, how do you prevent having a bowl or a hole in the bottom of the bowl?
Well, that's something I didn't go over.
Good question, Eastern York.
Sure. The bottom of the bowl is here.
Okay.
So I've drilled the hole only about 1.5 inches deep through the top.
Okay.
So all of that will be hollowed. And then I've got a small hole that I've created here by pressing in this tailstock. It's got a little point. And I'm going to push the foot far enough this way that won't affect me.
Okay.
And then after that, you'll see I'll measure constantly to make sure as I approach where my foot is, I'm not hollowing the bowl too deep.
Very cool.
So we'll cover that as we get to it. But you can see it starting. I'm basically right now, I'm just trying to make it round. I need to turn it, make it spin faster, and I can't do that right now because it's vibrating. So what I have to do is get it more symmetrical so that it doesn't have as much vibration.
But we see the shape beginning to take shape.
Sure.
Go ahead and start again, Matt. And let's go to Marshall Elementary in Lewisburg, Tennessee. Marshall, a question from you guys.
I had one student that wondered about the shavings from your lathe. Are they dangerous?
Yeah, talking about safety, we're all wearing the goggles that you're seeing me on right now because there are all sorts of shavings coming off. And in fact, one of our camera persons, Ryan over here, is getting shavings coming toward his camera, which you can see right now, those shavings coming toward him. He's wearing goggles for sure. The goggles make the difference. We're not going to get like big shards coming off, right?
No, not typically. I mean, we may have a little piece of bark fly off, but usually that's about it.
Okay. Now I've got a question for you about these. It is these numbers that we see right here. If we can get a shot of this piece of instrumentation right here. What do these numbers? What's happening here?
So that's an RPM. So that's telling me how fast it is.
Okay.
To be honest with you, I really don't pay attention to that.
Okay.
Because it's all about feel. So I want to take it up as fast as the lathe will safely take it. And a number doesn't really tell me that, but vibration does.
All right.
So I can tell by the vibration, the sounds that I'm hearing, whether or not I'm at a safe speed, and if I need to back it down.
Okay.
If you get tied up looking at numbers, then you're always making mistakes.
All
because
right.
every piece of wood is different. Every piece of wood, might be denser on one side
Really
than the other.
Feel what the piece is telling you.
Sure. You can feel how wet that is.
Yes, it's definitely moist. It's like you just ran water through it.
Sure.
And it's really beginning to become much smoother. The areas that are, I'll call them flat for now, more angled, are really reducing.
Sure, absolutely. So
Well,
now,
go ahead.
you noticed I stopped here. I'm going to come and cut the other direction.
Okay.
Because if I keep cutting this way, it's going to start peeling the bark off because I'll be pushing.
And you want
the
this bark
off.
as part of the natural
And I
rim.
want to try to keep it.
Okay.
Many cases you just can't keep it.
Okay.
But we're going to try.
All right.
This tree was, if it was cut in the cold of the winter, it'd be much easier to keep the bark on. Right now, it's already gotten warm here. This tree's cut recently, so the bark's not going to hold on as well as it would have had we cut it in December.
Gotcha. Well, I'll let you get started again. Matt will continue to work with the lathe and the wood bowl instrument. And let's see if Capitol High School in Helena, Montana. Capitol, if you guys are there, go ahead and unmute your microphone. Do you guys have a question right now for Mr. Keim? All right, Capitol, we're not hearing you guys come in, so we won't worry about you, but don't forget, everybody, you can email us your questions to live@hectv.org. That's live@hectv.org. We have an email question that came in from Salt River. Salt River's joining us from Scottsdale, Arizona via view-only video conference. Thanks for sending that in, Salt River. Do you sell work?
I do. I actually, 100% of what I make, I sell.
All right.
Unless I give it as a gift, but very few.
And the folks in Scottsdale are interested in, like, so how would someone in Scottsdale, Arizona potentially buy a piece from you?
They can go to my website. Craft Alliance also sells many of my pieces, so they can go call Craft Alliance, or I believe they sometimes have some up online. My website has links to Etsy, and I sell several pieces through Etsy. I only do shows within maybe 100 miles of St. Louis.
Okay.
I'll probably branch out sometime in the future, but I haven't felt the need to yet, so I haven't.
Okay.
But through my website is the best way. Some of my nicest pieces are always at Craft Alliance, so if you go there, you'll see some of my better pieces.
So craftalliance.org is the website there, and you're seeing KeimArtworks.com, which is Matt Keim's website. Matt will continue to work. You can definitely see the bottom of the bowl beginning to take shape. Sure. Things happening there as that goes on, and don't forget, if you've got email questions, send them to us at live@hectv.org. I've got another one coming in from Salt River. Yes. Do you teach courses yourself and teach classes with this now?
I do. I teach here at Craft Alliance at Grand Center, and I teach, currently I'm teaching Wednesday evening courses.
Okay.
So it's a 6-week course, 2 hours per class, and we do, of course, 6 classes.
And you're shifting now to get a different...
So I'm getting a different tool. I need to make a spot here to grab it with my chuck.
Okay.
So I need this to be just perfect. So I have to have that cut at a slight angle.
All right.
I need the angle here to be really straight so that it gets a really good grab, and I don't have to worry about it trying to come out of the chuck. So
all right.
This tool just allows me a little better access.
We'll let the cameras zoom in on that as you work with that. Let's go back to Pennsylvania, Eastern York High School. Let's have you guys come in. A question from you?
Yeah, I got one question. What's your favorite pieces of wood to work with, and why?
What are your favorite pieces of kinds of work to work with, and why?
Most of the pieces I do are natural edge, so they have that bark connection, and I enjoy keeping that connection to nature. You know, so I always, if I can, try to keep the bark or try to keep some connection so that you can see how it came out of the tree. You don't really have to guess. So, you know, as far as specific woods, locally, cherry is one of my favorites.
Cherry.
But I'm not very biased. I'll use about anything.
A good piece of wood is a good piece of wood to be able to work with. Thanks for that question, Eastern York. Let's go back to Marshall Elementary again in Lewisburg, Tennessee. Marshall Elementary, come right in with a question, or let us know if you don't have one.
Do you ever travel with, like, the craft fairs? We have a lot of craft fairs around here.
They're asking about craft fairs. You do travel to craft fairs yourself. They talk about a lot of craft fairs in their areas, and you do that as well?
I do about anywhere from 5 to 7 a year, typically, unless I have some commissions, and then if I have several commissions that are tying me up, then I'll do those instead of the craft fairs. I haven't put in for any for the spring. I decided to take the spring off. I have a furniture show here at the Grand Center in 2012 in January.
So you'll be working, so I'm furniture making.
So I have a lot of furniture to do right now, all with turned elements, but they take a lot of time.
Now I've noticed you've angled this.
Sure, I just wanted to get the tool rest closer to the piece, so that if I'm hanging way off the tool rest, then you're more likely you're giving all your leverage to the machine, and I'd like to maintain the leverage on my side.
All right.
So if I put the tool rest closer, now I have all the leverage by having the tool back with me instead of hanging over the tool rest on the other side. This is a very strong motor, so if I don't pay attention to that, pretty soon the machine is going to be pulling me instead of me pulling it.
Just to let you know, Matt, we're about We're just over 30 minutes into the program as you think in terms of time frame for creating the bowl or whatever we might need to do, just so you have an update on that. Let's go back to Fraser High School. Fraser has a question. Oh, we can really begin to see the bowl form take shape now. You guys can really see that. Fraser, a question from you guys, or let us know if you don't have one.
Yeah, we're wondering if he's ever worked with diamond willows.
Have you ever worked with willow?
I have.
Diamond willow?
I have. Diamond willow doesn't get very big, typically. But I have worked with several willows. They're all very soft and very difficult to work. But often they're very pretty. A diamond willow has a lot of bark inclusion. And bark inclusions are very nice looking.
And when you say bark inclusion, what does that mean?
So we may have one on here. If I grab this piece, you can see here, bark reaches all the way down into the piece of wood.
Oh.
So the wood, it had grown all the way around this, but bark had reached all the way in.
And so that's nice because it creates a really nice decorative element?
Sure, yeah. And on diamond willow, you get a lot of like ovals where the bark has turned into it.
Oh.
So it's very pleasing.
Oh, thanks, Fraser, for that question very much. Let's go back to Pennsylvania again. Eastern York, another question from you guys.
Is there a certain reason you chose sugar maple for this project?
Is there a reason you picked sugar maple for this particular piece, or is it like it's on the shelf?
No, it's just what I had recently.
Okay.
So I wanted something that was relatively green for ease. The drier the wood is, the more difficult it gets. We weren't looking for difficult today.
Yeah, we don't want it to be too difficult because we want to try to get it as close to completed or pretty roughed out as we possibly can today. And we've got an email question that's come again from Salt River. Thanks, Salt River. Don't forget, everybody, it's live at hectv.org. That's live at hectv.org with email questions. Salt River has sent us an email question. Do you have another job as well, or is your life supported full-time with artwork, woodworking now?
I do have another job. So I do this currently as I would say, a very serious hobby. I probably have more invested than most cabinet shops. I've got a very large selection of tools that I've purchased over the years, and right now 100% of what I make, for the most part, I put right back into it.
Oh,
so,
okay. Fantastic.
I own a lot of professional equipment that I've purchased over time, and I hope to someday get to that point where I'm doing this full time, but it's a ways off.
And so, like, you have, besides you have your own, we had an email question actually that came in from the Orchard Valley folks. Do you have a studio at home that you work in there?
I do. Yeah.
And you're doing some really fine work now.
Right now I'm really just trying to refine the shape.
Okay. And I assume the wood speaks to you. The wood's going to dictate the shape. How much? What's that dance, so to speak, between?
It does. You know, every time I've stopped it, I'm looking at the grain. I'm looking. You know, the form. You know, form is most important on any piece. You know, you can take the most beautiful piece of wood, and if your form is bad, the piece is bad. You can't cover up bad form. So in most cases, you want to really pay attention to the form.
Another email question we got in is, what about wood do you find most interesting?
You know, I think most interesting is the different grains that you'll find in every piece of wood. And if you look in here, you can see a lot of reflection from the light. So you can see all these kind of striations that are occurring, and reflects the light differently, and every piece is a little different.
And one of the cool things for me is that I would not have known that this would have existed, obviously, when we started with that block.
Sure.
And as you moved inside now, that's there, and that's a real interesting, you know, kind of fan-out look.
Sure.
That could be very beautiful.
Yeah, you never know what you're going to come across.
And go ahead.
I've already lost the bark here. You can see it pulled off. So most likely on this piece, we're going to lose all the bark. I typically like it to either all be there or I'll just pull it off. So most likely, once we cut into this a little bit, I may pull the bark off and do this one without. Another
email question we got from Salt River is like, how do you determine, like, from this piece of wood you're going to create this kind of object versus that? Is it based on size, the type of wood it is?
It is. I mean, it's, you know, if I pay for the wood, that's going to dictate it a bit, because I have to be able to make a finished product and still get out of it what I have into it, plus my, you know, what I need to profit from it. So if it's a very expensive piece of wood, it'll never be made into a functional item. You know, one thing you'll learn in art, the less you can use it, the more value it has. Functional pieces, while they're fun and then enjoyable, and I make many, many functional pieces, you're competing with the Pier 1s of the world. You're competing, you don't want to think that you are because it's a handmade item, but you are. And you have to keep that in mind if you're going to fill in functional work with your artwork. Your functional work has to be completely separate somehow. You have to make sure you create a separation between functional and art so that your buyers understand when they're buying art and when they're buying function. And then you have to price it accordingly. So it's the biggest challenge I have found from going from a craftsman to an artist is those price points, figuring that out, finding your market, finding out how do I price it. What is the right price? What's too little, what's too much? It's always a challenge.
I'm going to ask one of our cameras to get a shot of the floor just so that students can see the amount of wood shavings we've had during the program. And as they switch to that and you guys watch them continue to work here on the lathe, I want to go to Lewisburg again, Marshall Elementary. Do you guys have another question for Matt?
What's your favorite thing to create from that machine?
What's your favorite thing to create utilizing this kind of machine? Is this like really bowls focus for you or something else?
Yeah, the natural edge bowls, which is what we're doing today, is probably one of my favorite items. And I make a lot of them. They're very easy to sell and they're a lot of fun to do. And part of it's because they're challenging. So a standard salad bowl, while I make hundreds of them, they're not very challenging to me anymore.
Okay.
So, I'm going the right way here. So, while they're enjoyable, I need a challenge. I need something new, always. And see if we can get this off here. It got this so tight.
What we're doing now is?
So right now I'm taking the screw out and I'm going to flip this around and put it in the chuck so I can hold the...
Okay, and so because now we're going to begin to bore into the center of the bowl.
Correct. So now we're going to start to hollow it.
So now we're going to begin to hollow out the bowl, so we're going to switch out the wood so you can begin to see the inside part come out, so to speak, and we can see that begin to move as that happens. And the size that you work with in terms of what's going to bore into it, does that depend on the size of the piece of wood, or is there some sort of standard that you work with to make it happen?
We're not going to drill it, we're going to hollow it with the tool.
Oh, very good, okay.
Everything's done by hand.
Everything's going to be done by hand.
That would be cheating for sure.
Well, good to know. We don't want any kind of cheating.
We can't allow that.
No, that would not be a good thing whatsoever.
And it would not do a very good job to begin with. So,
okay.
We're really limited to doing this by hand.
Okay. So now, is there anything else the students just need to know about process right now before you begin this?
So I've got the basic outside form. I'm going to take this in a little more, in a little bit, but I want to get some of this hollowed first so that I have the support. I don't want to make this too thin. So I'm going to hollow this part out, get this to my finished thickness, maybe an inch in, and then I'll reevaluate and I'll bring that shape in a little bit.
Okay.
But I don't want to do that just yet.
All right. So while Matt sets up for this, let's go to more student questions. I'll go back to Fraser High School in Fraser, Montana again. Fraser, a question from you guys?
Do you work in painting or landscape drawings? Or pottery?
Oh, do you do any, is it wood that you work with exclusively? Have you done pottery or any other kind of stuff?
No, it's pretty much wood exclusively. I bought 2 pottery kilns about 2 years ago because I thought I'd try it, and about 3 weeks ago I sold them on Craigslist. So I decided that wasn't going to happen. I never fired them up. In fact, I had to go make up a plug so I could fire them up to show people that they even would work. So I'm going to sharpen my tool now.
All right. Okay, we'll move over. We'll slide over here. I'll get out of the way.
Yeah, I need a very clean cut, especially coming in where the bark and the natural edges.
So he's sharpening the tool, and as he continues to sharpen the tool to get that clean cut, let's go back to Pennsylvania again. Eastern York, do you guys have a question?
What's your favorite type of finish that you like to use on your wood projects?
Oh, your favorite finish on projects when you're dealing with wood?
I use tung oil blends.
Tung oil blends.
Yeah, so I've tried probably every finish imaginable. I've spent hundreds and hundreds of dollars trying them, and I always seem to gravitate back towards tung oil. So,
and why so?
I don't like glossy finishes, which is one thing. So I enjoy finishes that sink into the wood and create a very light film coat on top so that you're really looking at the wood and looking at the grain. You're not looking at a finish glaring back at you.
Okay.
So while I've done some furniture that has a gloss finish because it felt right on those, 99% of my pieces is a satin finish.
And as I go back over here to grab one of these finished pieces, am I picking up one that would have been done with tung oil?
Yeah, and that's about as glossy as any piece I'll do.
Okay.
Has. So that is done with it. That's 1/3 part tung oil, 1/3 part polyurethane and 1/3 boiled linseed oil. So it's a blend.
Okay.
And made famous by Sam Malouf, who was a chair
Okay,
maker.
great. We'll let you continue to work on that. I understand we've gotten some email questions that have come in from Orchard Valley, so let me hear what those are. Do you ever find yourself getting bored with working with the lathe, they want to know, and if so, what do you do to stay creative?
Well, I haven't yet, but, I started about, I don't know, a year ago looking at exhibitions. And exhibitions, what they allow me to do is do something completely out of the box. So I did one on toys recently, and if you go to my website, you'll see 3 toys that I made.
Oh, very cool.
Which were a lot of fun, all made on the lathe, but completely outside of what I normally did. And so I kind of decided I'm going to try to do 3 or 4 exhibitions every year where it's something after a purpose I'm not familiar with, so it's completely new. And those types of things, whoops, I hit the emergency stop.
You hit the emergency stop button. It's good to know that the machine has the emergency stop button. I want to go to Marshall Elementary in Lewisburg, Tennessee for another question, and then I understand we've got more email coming to us from Orchard Valley as well. Don't forget, everybody, it's live at hectv.org. Marshall Elementary, another question from you guys?
If you want to, would you attempt to make the biggest bowl in the world?
If you would want to, would you attempt to make the biggest bowl in the world if you could?
No, someone recently did one on an axle of a tractor. I think it was like 25 feet diameter or something.
Oh my gosh.
So I won't be ever attempting to top that. Yeah.
That is huge, 25 feet. I can't imagine dealing with an
I don't
axle of a
recall
tractor.
who it was, but it was someone overseas somewhere, and you can find it online if you looked it up. But,
very cool question, Lewisburg. Let's go to a couple more email questions we've gotten from Orchard Valley. What is the largest piece that you have turned?
My lathe will do a 2-foot diameter. So
2-foot diameter.
So I've done bowls about 22 inches.
Okay. 22-inch bowls.
There's a lot of force at work when you get into large pieces like that, and they take a lot of time, a lot of preparation, a lot of forethought to make sure it's safe.
And more care for safety in terms of like what they're potentially going to do?
Yeah, there's a lot of mass there. You know, if I get my finger in on here on accident, it's just going to break the lip off. If it's 2-foot diameter, it's probably going to break my finger instead. So you have to keep that in mind. And it takes a big tree. It's not easy. If you want to do a 2-foot diameter bowl, you need a tree probably at least 30-inch, 32-inch diameter.
Oh my gosh, okay.
So it takes a very large piece of wood.
Oh wow. Orchard Valley's interested in talking about money made off, obviously. Good idea, guys, to have some sort of economic interest in
everybody
in
wants
the
to know
work.
money.
So like when you talk about pieces from commission, how do you determine the price of a piece from commission, based on, size or the nature of what the person wants you to do and that kind of thing?
Well, the commissions are always a little more expensive because there's a design element. So if it's a piece that I just had an idea while I was laying in bed one night, I keep a journal by my bed so I can write them down, because that's typically where I seem to think of them. Then that idea, I didn't have to go through it. So I already worked through the process, so those pieces are usually a little cheaper than a commission. A commission piece, you have to think about all the time you're spending. And
we're about 45 minutes into the program, Matt, so we've got about 15 minutes left.
So we're going to get into it then.
We're going to get into it. So he's going to really begin to bore the hole, so to speak, into the middle of this bowl so that you guys are able to see that happen. And he's going to be really focused on that. And as he continues to be focused on that, we'll continue to ask for your questions throughout the program. So I'm going to let Matt work on that a little bit and have you guys watch that. And as this happens, let's go to Eastern York in Pennsylvania. Eastern York, another question for you guys right now.
What was the most intricate piece you ever worked on?
Oh, they're interested in intricacy. Like what is a piece that would be an example of really intricate work you've done?
Well, if you go online and look at the toys, you'll see those are very intricate. And there's a lot of little hidden things that I put into them. So, I made a couple that were made out of mostly a bunch of scoops. So you'll see the steering wheel was a scoop, and you have to look hard. If you owned it and you looked inside on the wheels, I might have textured a few scoops inside the texturing. So I always try to do something a little for someone to find later when I'm doing those types of pieces.
Very cool. We put up his website address earlier. We could bring that website address up again for everybody to let you guys know that if you go to that web address that he's got, that website he's got, you'll be able to find out those examples of those toy pieces. And if it's possible for us to get directly into the bowl to move the camera so we're like straight on at a moment in time, that might be kind of cool for the students to see the depth that's happening as we begin to create the inner space of the bowl. And he's going to continue to work with that as he continues to bore into that and creates that inner space. It looks like we've got maybe about a half an inch in so far. And so you work from the inside out. You start in the center and work to the outside.
I do, and I only go in and you can see about an inch at a time.
Okay.
And that's so I still have support.
Oh, because obviously if you went in too far, too fast, the outside might collapse on you?
It'll start flexing.
Okay.
So there's centrifugal forces at play here.
We've got an interesting question, Matt, about your nature and relationship to the work. Would you call this a passion or an obsession?
Oh, it has to be both.
Ah, how so? Talk about that a little bit as we see.
Well, this is, if you want to move further in this, the only thing that's going to get you good at it is hours and hours and hours on the lathe. So I think that takes a bit of an obsession to put those many hours in a shop. To learn. There's a lot of guys wonder why I'm better than they are, and they've been turning for 10 years. But if you looked at the number of hours I've spent on a lathe, you look at the number of hours they've spent on a lathe, I've got them circled 4 or 5 times. So, it's all about how much time you put into it. It's certainly a passion of mine. I greatly enjoy it. But I'm willing to put in 20 hours.
Break lunch. We certainly
You can really see the piece begin to take form as he bores into the center there. See the depth really begin to emerge. I'll go back to Marshall again. Marshall Elementary in Lewisburg, Tennessee. Do you guys have a question?
No, I just wanted to say that we have to break for lunch and that we certainly enjoyed this. And thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Marshall. It's absolutely great to have had you guys join us today. And the entire program will be archived on the hectv.org website, so you guys will be able to view it. And we've had another email question come in from Salt River, and that question is, so from a start to finish process, how might different types of wood vary the amount of time you would take?
Not very much.
Okay.
A very difficult wood would not, at home, of course, it would be a lot quicker because I'm focused 100%.
Yeah, that's so true. We're interrupting your work.
Yeah, it makes it a little slower here today. But, it's not going to make a big difference unless it's something extremely hard like African blackwood. It's not going to make much difference.
And do you have an idea in mind to start with about how deep the bowl is going to be? Do you know how far? Like at what point you need to stop on the back end?
I'm going to stop it almost where I'm at, just so we can get it closer to finished.
Okay.
Typically, I would probably take that all the way down to the far base. It would be very tall. But for today's purposes, it's going to be better if I cut it across on the outside.
So you're looking for, most frequently then, you're looking for about as thin as you can get?
Yeah, typically, about an 1/8 inch is what I'm shooting for.
So we can definitely see that we've got an interior to it that eventually over time you would make even deeper.
I would, yeah. If I was at home, I would make that even deeper.
Okay. And now you're doing some fine edging work
Yeah, I'm just going to bring this in a little bit so that it's easier to do the outside than the inside.
Oh, okay.
Currently, for sure. So I'm going to go ahead and bring this in a bit.
Fraser, Montana, another question from you guys at Fraser High School. Come right on in.
We have a question from Medrano Middle School.
Oh yeah, where do you get the products, wood products?
Where do you get your wood products?
Oh, so the wood products that you get come from, thanks for that question down in Dallas, the wood products that you get come from all over the place?
They do. There's a veneer mill in Cincinnati called Boke Veneer Mill. I buy woods from them occasionally. I'm currently trying to plan a trip down to Texas to try to pick up some mesquite.
Oh, some mesquite. The kids in Dallas may be familiar with mesquite wood for sure.
Which is very nice wood.
What about mesquite do you like as a wood to work with?
It's very stable, and it's very beautiful. It's got a real rich color to it. It's got a lot of natural defects, which are very beautiful.
Cool.
the more defective the wood is, sometimes the better it looks.
And that's because it gives you just more interesting
looks? Just a little more character.
Okay. Then I'll go to Eastern York. Eastern York, a question from you guys at this time?
We were wondering how you would go about chucking up one of the pieces of square stock like you showed early on in the beginning on the cabinet that you had, and you had the spiral spun around on it.
Oh, they're asking a question about the cabinet, you know, that we saw earlier at the beginning of the program, and the circular pattern that you've created on that cabinet. You actually did that on the lathe?
Sure, my lathe is much bigger than this.
Okay, your lathe at home?
So I put the two doors on the lathe like this and just spun them. And as they spun, I cut them with the tool.
Okay, very cool. Very cool question, Eastern York. And let's go back to Dallas, Texas again. Dallas? Okay. Then let's go to an email question I'm hearing. Oh, this is the process, obviously, that becomes difficult. Have you ever gotten into something you think, oh, it's going great, and it breaks on you? Or
Sure. Yeah, I don't lose many pieces because I usually recognize those defaults early on.
Okay.
And there's too much good wood to turn bad wood. So, so those pieces I'll just set aside.
Well, we'd actually had an email question from Orchard Valley that came in also that's kind of related to that. And that is, have you had the world of happy accidents happen to you? That you weren't expecting something and here some accidentally great thing occurred?
It has. Not many on the lathe. I mean, the lathe is probably the safest tool in a woodworking shop. You know, you're holding the cutting edge.
Okay.
You know, rather than it spinning and you working around it. So the lathe is very safe. And I do have wood occasionally come apart on me that, you know, some burls are falling apart before you start them. But they're so beautiful, you do it anyway.
Very cool.
So I'm trying to make a few finished cuts here on the inside. I'm going to try to
clean. So when we think
in
terms of like your basic tools, an email question we've gotten is, what kind of cost would they be getting into to get a basic good lathe and some good woodworking tools?
I would recommend, I mean, if you're just starting out, it's always best, I think, to buy the biggest used lathe you can come up with.
Okay.
And you know, I paid $350 for 3 very good sized used lathes. They came out of a high school that had no longer was had the program going. One of them I paid $40 for. One was $110, and one was $200, which I overpaid for, most likely. You know, I could have got it for much cheaper. But you know, new lathes are expensive. The price of steel's gotten pretty high. Your initial investment's probably going to be a minimum close to $1,000. If you really want to get into it.
Okay.
By the time you buy a lathe, you know, a chuck, several tools, you know, you can do it cheaper.
We're about 3 minutes left in the program here, so Matt, I'm going to let you just finish the piece up and talk to us through about what you might be doing.
So we're going to, at this point, I've got the shape that I like on the outside. I've hollowed it. It's a little thick on the bottom. You know, if we had more time, I would continue to make it thinner.
Okay.
But with the limited amount of time we have, I'm going to go ahead and find my point at the base and cut it off.
Okay, so like we're not necessarily going to have all 3 tiers of the base here, so to speak.
That gets way too busy. For me, that's too busy.
Okay.
So we're only going to keep the first tier.
So you're really much more into clean lines or the natural shape?
Yeah, and I don't, you know, very rarely do I ever dye or stain. I've done it, but it's very rare.
Okay.
So most of my experimentation is with carving.
Okay.
You know, on finished pieces. But for the most part, I like it to be clean, simple, and let the form speak for itself.
We've got about 2 minutes left. I'll let you deal with that to cut that off. And just to let everybody know, we've been really glad that you've joined us for today's program. If you've been watching us via interactive video conference, view-only video conference, or television, and you have additional email questions as you watch this, if you have additional email questions that you want to send to Matt, you can send them to us at live@hectv.org. And we'll have the opportunity to get them to Matt and let him respond to them, and we'll get those answers to you. As you can see, the cutting happening for the base to be created. So we've actually been, we've had a 60-minute program here, but we've probably been working on the piece for just about 50 minutes of that 60-minute program. So you can see how much can occur in a short period of time. Matt, conclusionary thoughts, final words about what makes wood great, or things that kids should be thinking about, or artists, people interested in this kind of work?
Sure. You know, it's a naturally renewable resource. You know, so it's you're not taking anything, because we don't have to cut trees down to make this. So it's a great thing to be able to use just Mother Nature. It's natural. It comes down in storms. You can turn for free off of that wood forever.
And are you about ready to take it off? Oh, he is taking it off.
Yep.
And we have a perilously close to final piece.
Yeah, and it would typically be a little thinner for today's purposes when we were short on time, so we had to leave it a little thick. But you know, the outside shape is pleasing. It's a continuous curve from the foot to the top, which is what I'm looking for. Levels out at the top, curves a little bit back in, and the grain is just beautiful. So what I'll do now is I'll put that in a brown paper bag and let it dry slowly over a few days. If I just left it sit out, the moisture is going to come out too quick and it'll crack.
Oh, okay.
So I have to take care of it even after this point. And since it's natural edge, I don't sand them until they're dry. So I'll take it off, let it dry, and then I'll sand it by hand.
Matt, thanks so very much for being with us today. We really appreciate the time. This has been fascinating. To everybody, it's Inside the Artist Studio Woods with Matt Keim. We're really glad you were able to join us today for part of HEC TV Live. Thanks to our interactive groups. Thanks to everybody here at Craft Alliance for making this possible. If you're in the St. Louis region, come down to the Grand Center Entertainment District, the corner of Grand and Olive here. You'll find the Craft Alliance location where all sorts of works of people are on display all the time. We look forward to connecting with you guys again next week. We'll be with Coca on our Little Dancer program. Bye, everybody.